Thank you so much for the valuable information. I would like to invite Dr. Bijan Azad, Associate Professor at AUB and Director at the Darwazah Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, who will give an overview about GRP.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you for being here. I want to preface what I'm going to say. First of all, I really want to thank the entrepreneurs themselves that are here. I know it's a challenge to get you in one room. I remember it was always a challenge. I'm going to try to speak closer. And also I want to recognize the Darwazah family. I know Rana is here, Rana Ramadan representing. Darwazah family has been instrumental in basically setting up the Darwazah Center, but also our mandate to basically try to help the ecosystem. And also other people in the audience, I really want to make sure that at least we take something away from today. Can I have a show of hands? How many people are entrepreneurs other than the people who were in the program? 1, 2. I know Hala is. Okay. So, great. And then how many people from the ecosystem are supporting business services? Great, great. So basically what my portion of this, before we get to the panel, and it was good that a lot of things that were covered, I don't have to cover again because the previous panel with the help of Rasha really brought some interesting points out. But I just want to highlight 5 purposes I think that we have today. One is to basically close this program that we have had with the USAID's financial help and DAI locally, and of course all the entrepreneurs and the people participated. We want to close that successfully. Second, what we want to draw on the lessons that basically people have taken away, and going forward, what can we do about it? Third, we want to highlight what the program basically aims to do in a very quick way, through a PowerPoint presentation, but also a couple of videos. The fourth point is that we want to make sure that everybody, both the entrepreneurs, word of mouth, we would have liked to see more people here, but it's okay. There will be many more occasions to do this. Both entrepreneurs, but also the ecosystem players can do the work of, basically increasing awareness. But much more important, I think the fifth point is actually we need to be aware, all of us, both the ecosystem players as well as the companies, what's happening. And also build a community like this that's ongoing. Because that in itself is actually a great function. Believe it or not, that's important. I know Endeavor has been doing this for a long time, since it was set up internationally and locally. I know our Lebanon chapter, our Jordan chapter is trying to do that. But building this community is key. So what I'm going to do now, so I'm going to show you a video which summarizes the program. And then I will kind of talk about some major aspects. So basically, we realize that this scaling up process is like growing a tree. And what most of us, at least who are more or less, when you want to have children, are very impatient. And I know even adults are impatient. What's the thing about growing a tree? You can't grow it overnight. You can't throw a lot of water, it doesn't matter. Throw a lot of money at a company overnight to try to escape. It doesn't. It's growing a tree. If you want one of these huge, massive trees, you have to grow it overnight. So it's important to realize that. And then also that, like Yusuf mentioned, Ahmed reinforced that, and basically the challenges of going through this, the reason I was reminding you that each of those stages is a challenge by itself. You cannot kind of hope for the best. Oh, I solved the last one. Khalas, I'm set. I can go. No, each one of them will bring fresh challenge. And I know everybody's just smiling, but I think that's exactly right. So how do we have to do this?
You probably didn't recognize him from his suit and tie. How about now? He's an entrepreneur by day and a superhero by night. And just like every superhero needs a superhero power, a CEO needs the right tools to face the growth-related villains in strategy, human resources, finance, marketing, and sales. In came the Growth Readiness Program to sharpen his superpowers, stand him out in the eyes of potential investors, and overcome the valley of death. If you're a CEO like Samir, the GRP is the right program to equip you with the know-how and actionable tools to scale up. The first round of the program was funded by USAID and implemented by AUB. It targets promising firms with annual revenues of $1 to $5 million. The GRP is the first program of its kind in the region, and given that only 2% of companies manage to reach and exceed $5 million in revenue, GRP is there to help you be among them. The program features an assessment of organizations' growth readiness. A focused executive education program shows you how to develop your growth plan and prepare for pitching it. This targeted executive education program provides a growth readiness assessment, focused modules on strategy, human resources, finance, marketing, and sales, and one-on-one mentoring sessions. It's time to be the hero of your own business. The CEO's commitment will provide a superhero energy source to everyone in the company. Samir and his company are flying. Will your company be next? For more information, visit www.aub.edu.lb/GRP.
Great. Okay, so a few things about the program. I think you know very well that if it wasn't for the help of USAID, we wouldn't be here. And the goal of basically helping push the agenda of scaling up is critical, because also the other thing that statistics that you should know about is that 92% of the companies in the region fall in this category. So in other words, if you make it even a small dent in this, you have a large impact. And this, I think, next steps would be basically figuring out how can we extend this program and programs like it, because we are not the only ones in the ecosystem offering programs like this addressing these needs. There are other people, you hear from them in the next panel. But what's important is that basically this is the key to pushing the agenda forward. I already talked about a few things. And the last panel talked about, I think the first question was about what's the difference between a scalable business and a startup, or what's a scalable versus a startup. And what the other thing that I want to highlight is what's the difference between a small business that's surviving, it's doing okay, and a scalable business. And basically, scalability means that you are willing to go from 1x to 2x to 3x, 4x, but you also are willing to put the resources and the foundation in place to do that. Why? The payoff is quite good, but also you have to be prepared for it, because you may be in this just to feed the family, or you are happy with having $1 to $5 million. There's nothing wrong with that. But the difference is that for a scalable business, the priorities change, the amount of energy you have to put in changes, et cetera, et cetera. And we want to be clear that there have been companies internationally and locally that can serve as more or less blueprint. They have set in place this sustainability process, the fact that you can water the tree and it will grow, right? And Hekma is a local company, Apple is another one, that basically you can see the takeoff. As these systems, processes, and other requirements, prerequisites are put in place, the process of sustaining the growth becomes what? It becomes self-generating. I'm not going to belabor the value of death, because it was handled very well. I'm really happy about that. I'm very happy. This proves that you can be negative and still people can remember you. Of course, I am not Donald Trump, but it's okay. Okay. The only thing I want to kind of belabor about this, why we want this to be imprinted, and I can't tell you how gratifying it is. You want to wake up every morning, go to work, and understand you want to avoid this. And I am gratified that the people in our cohort, these founders, these CEOs, are actually worrying about this. This is very gratifying, because that's the first step, right? GRP and the story of it coming about. And I like the fact that, again, some of these themes have come up before, but I just want to kind of put an overall framework to them. What happens currently in our ecosystem is that, and I heard this the first time from Eli. Eli and I have worked together for quite a bit. First, more or less, he was one of the first, if you like, test cases I worked with to try to implement some of these ideas. But one of the key things that I remember he mentioned is, you know what, in our ecosystem there is a lot of help for startups, but very surprisingly, there is not enough help for people who have revenues of $1 million. In other words, I am making it. I am generating profit, I am generating revenue, I have employees, but I want to go further. So, and this becomes the more or less rallying cry for a lot of us to more or less take this seriously, pushing forward. And the other thing about it is that we are focused on the fact that money is part of the equation and it is an important one. After all, money lubricates the economy. But we have to be also clear that money is not the only thing. And in fact, I remember in one of my discussions that I used to have with Eli when I was working with him, this was back 4 years ago, when basically he wanted some advice, some tools to be able to more or less build the company up the way he wants. But his problem also, the other problem that he faced is that everybody he talks to, they say, why don't you go get an MBA? Okay, that's an answer, but that cannot be the answer for people in this position. Why? If you are a founder and co-founder, your work load and tempo of work that you're dealing with, it almost rules out doing an MBA of any kind, even an executive MBA. So what you need, something that's more fit for the job. And finally, when you go knock on consulting companies' doors, especially large consulting companies, they may have the knowledge to help you. But what happens is that they are fit for dealing with more mature, larger companies, and the dollar, more or less, aspects of this, the financial price tag is quite steep. And therefore, why a slightly different or more targeted, tailored approach to the needs of the startups. These are startups that have passed the stage, are now generating revenue. Some of them have been around like Hanania for a long time. There are these stable companies that more or less have a long history, more than 40 years. And there are companies that are fresh, but both of them are basically in the same boat. The what is that basically we implemented under JCP. We think is one way of doing this, is not by no means the only way. Focuses on basically identifying, scaling barriers or challenges specific to the firm. Why is that important? Because you need to, if you're going to start working and revving up your car, which that's what you're going to do when you're going to scale up, right? You want to be sure that the engine is working flawlessly. You don't want to end up with suddenly the engine light coming up and saying, wow, you're out of oil, I'm sorry, the engine burned out. So more or less what's important is that we need to have a much better handle for this roadmap to be developed, right? And the solution to do that is more or less as a diagnostic. And that's where we teamed up with a investment advisory company who does this quite well. And basically they helped prepare this aspect. The product you get is far more involved, but at least you get a dashboard. And basically you get an assessment, and the names are masked here so that nobody has to worry about this, what this is. But basically you get an assessment of where you stand, whether you're in the green, whether you're in the yellow, or whether you're in the red, in different aspects of a scaling up roadmap that you have to take on. The other thing, and I was very happy to hear again, that strategy is a key aspect of companies that want to scale up, because they have to focus or change their strategy and sometimes their business model. And one of the key things is clarity about that is important. You cannot kind of write it off. And it's what makes the company steer in the direction, have a North Star. North Star, what's the significance of North Star? Wherever I am, I can look at it and I can see that I need to move in that direction. Am I getting closer? Am I getting farther? Very important. And then having the right tool also. The page strategic plan that the companies who participated basically worked on was that they identified not only the things that they had to work on, right, but set a schedule in place by quarter, by year, to move forward in the next 3 years. And identifying their X factor. Your X factor is your competitive advantage. At the high level, you know you're competing in this market, but what is the thing that's going to make you leave the competition in the dust? That's very important. And even if you are a $1 million company, you are going to have to worry about that. You have to be able to articulate it to yourself, because if you can't articulate to yourself, how do you expect your customers to be able to more or less understand that? I'm very happy again that the previous panel brought up quite a bit the issue of people. You are making money, you are able to generate profit, you're keeping customers more or less happy, but it turns out the moment you have expanded, it feels like we are all in the same boat, but when we row, the boat does not always move in the direction it should. In fact, a lot of times we are rowing against each other. Wow, how is that possible? Aren't we in the same company? Well, indeed, exactly what was discussed in the previous panel are the things that you have to worry about. We characterize this as getting the right people on the bus and getting the right people in the right seat. And some of the tools to do with the accountability chart, for processes and functions that Yusuf mentioned are exactly the right tools, and plus a lot of other things that basically puts the correct infrastructure, prerequisites on the people side. And the fourth component becomes this notion of worrying about revenue is good, but now that you're worrying about scaling up, actually it's cash, because most companies run out of cash faster than they run out of anything else. In fact, it's like oxygen. You kind of don't have enough of it at the right time to help you do the things you're doing. So the program focuses on some basic things, and Lena will talk about that later on in our panel, but the things that you need to worry about. Why? Okay, you may be taking accounting, you've taken finance, but there are some basic things that for a scale-up is important. You need to find out, if I spend $1 today, when am I going to get back that dollar into the company? Sometimes it takes 29 days, sometimes it takes 6 months. Well, if it's taking you 6 months, you got to work on it. Why? This is disaster for being able to retain cash so that you use that to invest and grow up. Other topics that were mentioned also that we cover: marketing, especially covering pricing and market sizing, critical sales, setting up a systematic sales process for selling, negotiation, how can you get to yes, but also have a very good understanding of a soft process that perhaps you don't think about, but actually is crucial. You have to negotiate with investors, you have to negotiate with customers, you have to negotiate with suppliers, you have to negotiate with everything. In fact, the gentleman who gives this, a lot of examples he gives are how he negotiates with his spouse. It's very, very telling, because that's where you find out what works and what doesn't work. And finally, notion of governance, just-in-time governance. You want to put controls in place that work for you. This is not corporate governance a la, I'm a huge corporation. No, I am a 50-person, 100-person company, and I want to be able to have a proper set of controls. The how, quickly, I mentioned to you first, we identify the barriers, then we work with the firm giving the assessment back, then we go through this 10 days of executive education. It's effectively every month we meet for 2 days. And then at the end, the company, throughout this process, is developing its roadmap for growth planning. And then through a one-on-one mentoring session, this plan gets debugged. And I go to call it debugging. Those of you who know programming, or if you don't know programming, you know what debugging is. You kind of work through your code to make sure it's going to be workable after you put it in practice. That's exactly what that is. And then because it's one-on-one, you get to kind of discuss things that perhaps you couldn't discuss in class. And it's it's very, very understandable that that's the case. And finally, you actually, in order to road test this, you actually do the presentation in front of investors. At the end, you pitch it. Why? You need to test this out. You need to find out if it's workable or not. So that's the final component of the program. I want to also bring to your attention that our emphasis, again, is on execution. Execution of a scaling, not just the planning of a scaling. And it was very important that I heard some of the responses that in fact the participating companies thought that was an emphasis. Their emphasis is on having a workable product. We are interested in you learning a theory, but you need to apply it. And if you can't apply it or you're not able, it's our job to sit down with you, to debug it, and also make sure that we're giving you some feedback as well as help to be able to do that. And the fact that the most important tool in planning is the whiteboard. Why? Forget about computers. You are writing on the whiteboard what needs to get done this quarter and making sure that everybody is following that. This graphic is not working. It's okay. So, it did. Okay. So basically, what the graphic is supposed to show is that you are combining different elements, and therefore you are setting the stage for growing this tree, right, over here. And then, if you're doing the right thing, this tree will start growing and would start to go through these stages. And if you're up to the challenge, and if you basically do the follow-up work, this will happen. So we're not saying this is easy. I want to give that impression at all. But I want to say that the things we have done and the things other people in the ecosystem are doing are the things that if you start following up, will basically can result in a flywheel effect. And those of you who don't know what a flywheel is something that can basically store energy and then give it back. So therefore it becomes a self-sustaining process of turning. I was told that not everybody knows what's flywheel. Okay, I'm going to end with a testimonial video.
Al-Tibbi is the largest Arabic medical platform. As for any growing company at this stage, we still face many challenges, among which were human resources management, finances management.
NatHealth is a mature company that does the back office work of medical insurance claims. Usually matured companies look for growth. The question is where and how much.
As a mature company, for 43 years of experience in solar energy, we've learned a lot from the Growth Readiness Program about capacity building tools, strategies, access to big investors.
We had really ambitious plans to expand to Europe, MENA, Latin America. When we joined this program, we knew that we have to focus on the main countries that we need to expand to and put our strategy in a one-page example, and that was very challenging, but yet it really helped us to know where to expand in the first stage.
The Readiness Program helped us through its methodological approach of strategy, people, cash, and implementation or execution, find the right path to reach these numbers.
Honestly, we faced many challenges for many years, bringing in investors to our field, solar energy. The Growth Readiness Program provided us with the opportunity to meet big investors in our field.
The program helped us a lot, specifically with human resources management and identifying the gaps in our management structure.
The Growth Readiness Program helps Madfu'at.com in focusing its sales strategy. It also helped us in how we define our key performance indicators. This was reflected into how we select our candidates and how we choose the different capacity programs for our current employees.
For this, we are expanding the team by 30%, and we just started the hiring process.
Throughout the program, we had many tools to work on those unit economics that would help us take it to different levels.
The one-to-one sessions helped us to remodel our investment plans and to consolidate our strategy.
I had a great time with this program. We learned a lot, had a lot of fun, networked a lot.
We've learned a lot. We never thought we'd learn as much. We learned about capacity building, access to finance.
We definitely recommend this program to any other company, specifically startups.
This program is very good also for mature companies. It can help them discover new tools to use and to utilize in order to seek their objectives.
I recommend it to every company in Jordan.
Growth Readiness Program gives you
Networking,
Success,
Knowledge,
Expansion.
focus.
This is our vision. We hope other people join us. Basically saying that in Silicon Valley, they call a $1 million value company that has gone through a process a unicorn, especially if it achieves it in 5 years. So in other words, in Silicon Valley, if you achieve valuation of $1 million, you're called a unicorn. Why do they call it a unicorn? Because it doesn't exist. So it's unusual. But we think that in the region, we need to put effort into a scaling up. And a scaling up is as important as a startup, if not more. So we think that each ecosystem can put its energy into basically helping in each ecosystem anywhere from 10 to 20 years our own unicorn. Why? Because that's the way you will generate long-term, basically, system that these companies from now on can draw on. Remember, when Hekma started in 1978, it was a small company. Now, by standards of Silicon Valley, okay, it can be called a, let's say, a maturing unicorn. That's okay. That effort is critical. So our vision has to be long-term, and I really think this is a very important task we're gathered, and we should not be deterred by the challenges. Why? The actual, basically returns, the rewards are amazing. Thank you very much.